My name is Cheryl Baeza, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also a parent of 6 children in a blended family. And one of the middle children in that family, the middle child in that family is my son, who is now 53. And if you'll excuse me, I'm going to look at my notes because that helps a lot. So one of the things I learned in graduate school was the importance of working with people and respecting and individualizing according to their needs. And I have to tell you, in my journey, I've seen a failure in that, especially among the mentally ill people that I've worked with, that I've known, that I've lived with. And it's not because of the individuals, because we've met some wonderful individuals throughout this journey. It's because of the system that's broken. So as a social worker, I worked in a variety of settings, including a state hospital and an HMO, and I did special needs adoptions. I worked with abuse. I've seen a lot of things in my lifetime. And my son, who is now 53, was diagnosed with schizophrenia at age 19 after several years of being mentally ill and having symptoms, being in private schools, receiving services, and never being diagnosed until age 19, even though there was a family history going back 4 generations identifying the illness as schizophrenia. And I have to tell you, this was a time, if you'll remember, some of you maybe, that families were blamed, and I was often the center of that blame. And one of the things we did when my son was a child was attend family counseling to fix the family because we'd failed. But I'm really here today to talk about something else that I think is really relevant immediately in this society, is lack of housing, adequate housing for the mentally ill. My son is currently at CRU in Pueblo, and while I'm very grateful for the services that he's received there, and it has been life-changing. He was in rehab, the SLP program there, and then he was now he's in CRU. He's been there almost 2.5 years because they cannot find a placement in the community that fits his needs. He has a pretty severe illness. He is managing it, but without the stability of structure and specific services, he can fall through the cracks. He can become a danger to himself and to others, which is why he's there in the first place. I have to tell you that finding suitable housing and appropriate treatment has been a challenge for the last 33 years. It's at best been short-term and at times inadequate, and at times not meeting those needs that I talked about earlier, and the respect, receiving the respect for himself as an individual. My family had a very difficult time, because the mental illness was on his father's side of the family. They had a very difficult time accepting that my son had a mental illness. And but my mother has said recently, now she has advanced dementia, but when she was in the earlier stages of her dementia, she said to me, and she had been very critical of him throughout his lifetime. He could just do better than this and blah, blah, blah. She said, he's had a difficult life and he's done well. He's managed. He's lived through it. 2 other family members in the generations I mentioned, the 4 generations, have committed suicide. My son has had several attempts at suicide. In fact, he was in the hospital at 19 because of a suicide attempt. So this is because it's so frustrating. He tried to live on his own. It was very difficult to do. It's very difficult to find adequate housing, to maintain that housing with support. He has had, I'm grateful in fact. I think it could have been a lot worse because he's still here and he has learned he now can enjoy going to concerts and he can sit still and watch a movie for an hour and a half. He can do things that he wasn't able to do 20 years ago. So I'm grateful for some of the advances he's made, some of the medications that have helped, but I still think that we've got a long way to go. And I think one of the major problems we have right now is housing. And I see that I'm a volunteer with NAMI. I've been involved with NAMI for 25 years, and I've met many people through that journey. And they're now, so one young man, well, he's a younger man than me, but middle-aged, he had never been homeless. He was a carpenter and had owned a home prior to becoming mentally ill. And he was homeless for the first time this past summer because he could not find adequate housing. So that's what I'm here to plead for. I think that in other parts of the country, I know there have been less expensive programs than we now provide for. I think remaining in the state hospital for as many years as my son has been there has been very costly. You'll have to agree with me. And that if there had been adequate housing in the community and the supports that he needed to remain in that housing, we could have saved a lot of money. And I do know that in Colorado, I've talked to Lori about this, and I know that we have, there are some options, but those options are mostly for the very wealthy and not for the middle class. I'm having problems finding adequate services for my mother who has advanced dementia. She lives with us because I won't put her in a place where she can't get adequate care. Anyway, I thank you for your time.